model it has, it's hardwired model. And the mathematics of the model never evolves. No adaptation, no tweaking of the coefficients, no adding new terms to the model. Just whatever model it has, it's an algorithm then that doesn't change. Humans put the model in as a fixed mathematical or computational model.
I wonder what ChatGPT 4.0 will say about how do you explain machine learning to a 5-year-old or third grader?
Good question. I don't know. But I mean, you would certainly say if you observed, you ask the kid whatever their favorite thing is, like baseball, for example, and you observe that there's this new player, and every time he plays, he hits a home run, or almost all the time. And then there's another new player who can barely get on base, but he's a good catcher. And the kid says, oh yeah, this guy has got this talent, and this guy's got that talent, and it basically looks at a lot of data and basically maps out the characteristics that make some player a good player or a good position player. And that's learning from lots and lots of observations.
So learning is defined as that you can see measurable with calibration and validation, that you can see the progress.
Yeah, you can make a prediction based on a pattern. You see a pattern, you say, well, if this pattern persists, then this is what's going to happen this time. And if you keep making good predictions, then you say, I've got a reliable model, makes good predictions. But it was never given the model. It had to construct the model from lots of raw data. And that's what these large language models do. They look at tons and tons of text that people have written, since the beginning of writing. And they can write grammatically correct sentences, syntactically correct sentences, which may or may not be true sentences, but at least they're readable sentences that you can diagram and figure out what they're actually saying. And the next issue is, how do you make sure that the sentence that you're saying is anywhere near the ground truth and not confabulation or whimsy or nonsense?
So again, how do you know one machine is learning versus the other machine is not learning? What's the difference that make the difference?
The ability to make timely, reliable predictions consistently.
But the machine is being programmed by a human being. It's all running by programming. So how do you define it as a machine is learning instead of the
if it's programmed
from the human to make that possible? That's why I get stuck. Is like I can never pass this part of it, but I get into that discussion.
Let's see if Kayla wants to turn on her camera and say hello.
No camera. Hello.
Hello, Kayla. I was going to say, ask Sam. He's the expert on AI.
There's too much to be an expert on right now. You can be expert on small aspects of it. This field is changing by the week.
The fact that it's an expert in writing readable sentences and paragraphs, that there's no spelling errors, there's no grammatical errors, there's no syntax errors, and you can diagram the sentences and the sentences say something, that's fabulous, because most people can't do that. Now, the hard thing is not only to say sentences that you can understand what they say, but they're true, or they're testable, and they're not misleading and propaganda and nonsense.
They're true to the extent of the model.
Well, the idea is that you want to get to the ground truth, so you can test the sentences. You can do epistemology. You can say, is there any reason to disbelieve these sentences or this paragraph? And you can go back and figure out, how would a scientist test it? Make a prediction. How many times can you make a prediction from the sentences that turn out to be true? Or how could you make a prediction that you can prove is an incorrect prediction? Challenge it to predict something that's not obviously going to be true, an unlikely, hard to predict observation. Like there's going to be an eclipse on this day in this location. You look in the sky and you're going to see an eclipse of the sun. The average human couldn't do that.
Josh has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just watched a video this week that really clarified a lot of things about what is machine learning, what's really going on, blah, blah, blah. We keep getting these conversations looping because it is very confusing. but the video was about learning the pattern recognition of whale sounds.
Yeah.
How to identify individual whales from each other, and then taking those individuals and how they talk to each other, and then so on and so forth. And in doing that, excuse me 1 second, Poopy. In doing that, what it did was explain how language itself, whether it be English or any other language, has an actual shape. And that's what really kind of made this.
Oh no, Josh is freezing. Universal sign for freezing. Usually Josh comes back in 20 seconds.
Actually 3D, and that's what's going on, is it's making shapes. And if you can wrap your head around every single relationship of similes, synonyms, etc., so on and so forth, this word is like that word, and put them all into a shape like a 3D map, it starts to realize that we're turning all of knowledge into language, and then language into something else. Anyway, I'll stop because of the little one. Okay, thank you.
The one word that I missed, Otter couldn't get it either.
So the two sentences that the Bart have given back to me is: machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence that allow software application to become more accurate in predicting outcome without being explicitly programmed to do so.
Yeah. Like when Joshua froze, I predicted 20 seconds he would come back. Why 20 seconds? Because it's happened enough times, and that's sort of the nominal amount of time it takes for him to get unfrozen.
Right.
Oh, you're muted, Joshua.
So machine learning is algorithm use historical data as an input to predict new output value. I wouldn't label this machine learning. I don't know what I would label it, but it's very misnomer.
I have a question regarding Stork. I checked in the internet. He was a research director with Recall. I mean, color scanning, printing.
You're talking about this Stork?
David G. Stork, yes.
Oh, that's the editor of this book, yeah.
Yes, where Arthur C. Clarke did the foreword. And you
Right.
know him? You know him, Barry?
I never met him, but David Stork contacted a bunch of people to write chapters for this book. And among the people that he contacted was my good colleague and friend, Roz Picard, who is at the MIT Media Lab, who founded the Affective Computing Research Group. And she wrote a chapter in here called "Did Hal Cry Digital Tears?" Because when Stork went to her, he said, we know that of the characters in 2001, Hal is the most emotional character, much more emotional than the human astronauts. And so he wanted her to write something about machine emotions. And what Ross ended up is this chapter called "Does Hal Cry Digital Tears?" And so she knows him, but I never met him. The reason that I'm going to give a talk is there's a local group called the Lexington Computer and Technology Group, and they meet every Wednesday, and they just have some topic of the day. And one of the things that as a proposed topic was predictions that come true or don't come true. And I said, oh, I even have a book, based on that idea. And they said, great, Barry, you lead that session. So I agreed to lead the session. I wanted to get Roz to come on that day and talk about her chapter. Unfortunately, I talked to her last night and she's completely tied up that particular morning and can't come on the session. So I'll have to do it. But I think Dan Dennett has a chapter in there. Quite a few famous people have wrote chapters in this book. And I'm going to pick 2 or 3 chapters and point out the ones that did or didn't come true that are in the book. And then the one that's not in the book, machine learning, it's the one prediction that doesn't exist in the story. By the way, Stanley Kubrick wrote the screenplay first And after the screenplay, then Arthur C. Clarke wrote the book. It is reverse of most movies and books. The book came after the movie. Kubrick wrote the screenplay first. And they're a little different. They had different concepts of how to make the characters have emotions and things like that.
That's very interesting. Barry, another question. In some of my circles, we had Paul Werbos with us. He's in Washington. He claims to be the father of machine learning because he was IEEE, NAS, NRC, all this in the Congress and wherever. He's been somehow like a scientific director, giving the money and leading the people who later claimed that they did machine learning. But do you remember Paul Werbos? Should we invite him to such a session?
I don't recognize the name. How do you spell his last name?
I will put it in the chat.
Yeah, I don't recognize. I always thought that Jeffrey Hinton kind of gets credit, not so much for machine learning generally, but this variety of machine learning that the chat GPTs are doing, that he gets credit for that approach to machine learning. But I didn't know that one person gets credit for machine learning in general.
Well, he said he, being with IEEE and NRC and being in the Congress in Washington as a scientific whatever, he really helped to get the whole thing started. I will put a few data points together and send it to you and Sam, and then we can see what it's out of it. He's 85, 90 years old, but quite alert.
By the way, Heiner, this session with the Lexington Computer and Technology Group, they meet Wednesday morning from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, which you have to figure out. That's, I think, mid-afternoon for you. And anybody can attend. You don't have to be a local, and it's on the internet. So if you wanted to come to that session and participate.
Send me the link and I forward it to him.
Okay.
And for me, maybe I can join as well. Yes, that would be a good Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'm happy that we do have people connect remotely, just for an individual session, because that day's topic is of interest. And love to have anybody who has some insight into predictions which do or do not come true, not just the Hal's Legacy. That just happens to be the book I own.
Well, he is with me and Jerome Glenn around this AI and general artificial intelligence and Millennium Project, mid and long-term technology society forecast. So he's in this group, well established. And as he's a little bit older than all of us here, maybe he is still alert and ready. So please do that. That would be a very nice outcome because I'm a very big fan of Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah, I'll send you the link and the blurb. And this group has a website that shows the schedule for all the talks and the recordings of the past talks, in case you want to see those as well. I'll give you the link to the Zoom link for the session and the time, and also the link to their website where they've got the whole history of it, so you can see what else. Perfect. And there are, because it's the Lexington Computer and Technology Group, there's a lot of old codgers in it. There's a lot of retired people, a number of whom are my age and older.
Perfect. So you see, even when I'm going out of the picture, I'm still around. Don't consider or infer that I'm not interested when you talk some tech stuff with Sam Chan, but really that I try to do other things besides.
Yeah. Too many of our previous sessions only been Sam and I. And so we talked the things that he and I are both jointly interested in, which is a very narrow focus, which Sam Hahn finds boring, unfortunately. But that's what happens when there's only two people.
Okay, so after I revisited machine learning again, and I don't like to label it machine learning. I would call it programming that look at the historical data.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, there's a funny story. The topic of chaos comes up quite often. And I wanted to mention one of the less well-known contributors to chaos theory, which is Mitchell Feigenbaum, who died, I think, a couple of years ago. And he found a number called Feigenbaum's constant, which is associated with bifurcation, how often you get bifurcation. And I couldn't remember what Feigenbaum's constant was or how exactly it's defined. So I went to Google Bard and I said, tell me about Feigenbaum's constant. And it said, oh, it's the ratio of successive appearances of bifurcation events. And it said, it's just the ratio of these successive events. He says, for example, the first two bifurcations of the logistic is like 1.6 and 1.7.
Come to the stage.
And it said, and the ratio of those is 4.6, which is 5. And I said, wait a second. The ratio of 1.6 to 1.7 is not 4.6. And so Bard apologized and tried to explain it again and got the same mistake. It made the same mistake like 4 times in a row. So finally, I went and looked it up myself, but Bard simply could not hack the math of how do you get Feigenbaum's number out of the frequency of new bifurcations. It had the wrong formula. It couldn't understand the formula. And I said to Bart, I said, would you please tell your developers that you can't explain Feigenbaum's number, that you can't even divide two numbers and get the right ratio? And it promised it would do that, but I don't think it will. But those are classic examples where it makes a stupid mistake, trivial mistake, and you know it's wrong. And often I'll ask it something and it has no idea. And then I'll eventually figure it out and I'll tell it the correct answer and it'll confirm that I got the correct answer, but it never got the correct answer on its own.
So what do you call this kind of learning? Short-term memory learning?
No, I call it misconception-based unlearning or non-learning. That sophomoric mistakes and sophomoric misconceptions, which are patently erratic on their face. If you take two numbers and the ratio of these two numbers are very close to 1 and assert that the ratio is close to 4, I mean, how can it do that and be that naive? Sam's got his hand up.
I think to focus on its naivete in this specific error is very short-sighted. I think what's astonishing to me is how much it can do now, despite the last 20 or 30 years of neural network work. And the fact that now improvements are happening at such a rate that to me, these errors will be quickly corrected. And so I think it's not very interesting to focus on these errors for me. What I'm interested in is how it then extrapolates from these, what you call simple pattern recognition pieces, to actual reasoning. And I think that is just around the corner. And that, I think there will be no doubt. It will do this, and it will do this soon. And this is what I think we're generally today calling AGI, Advanced General Intelligence.
Yeah.
And that is Skynet. That is where we now have some things to really, really think about. But to focus on arithmetic errors, you're only going to be relevant for about a week or two before that gets fixed.
Well, maybe I'll ask it in a month to explain Feigenbaum's number again and see if it still makes the same student.
It'll do better. By the way, interestingly, there's like model 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These things are coming out very, very, very quickly. Forget whether it was Llama or something else. 3 was never released because from 2 to 3, the number of such errors increased dramatically. And so it wasn't until 4 that they actually fixed this thing. And so these kind of blips will happen. And it's happening so fast that I think it's not even useful to think about them right now, these errors. The whole trajectory is what's interesting. Over.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's just that what you notice are these obvious errors that are so sophomoric that they just, that kind of knocks my socks off.
But how toddlers learn, right? Toddlers have to go through these error cycles also. And toddlers take, I don't know, 4 years to learn language reasonably, and then probably another, I don't know, 6 to 10 years to learn arithmetic. And then there's probably more to learn how to read emotions and, expressions. And then there's more to learn things like infinitesimal shifts like calculus. So these things will come. So the training that's being applied to these models is going to, in some way, parallel the training of human entities. And the interesting thing here is every human entity has to go through this cycle. So there's a tremendous cost of, let's say, 20 plus years for every human to get to this level of competence and understanding. What's interesting in the AI world is that cost only has to be expended one time. Then you can copy it. Now you got billions of AI entities now at the same or better level of competence. That's what I think is interesting. So, the fact that we have protoplasm like you and I, learning these things and wasting 20, 30, 40 years before we can actually contribute to society, in a sense, we can avoid it for every single artificial intelligence be competent without spending 20 or 30 years getting competent because it's so easy to actually just replicate this intelligence. Over.
Sam, your audio is so bloody garbled that even Otter can't get the words that I can't get.
Some echo going on.
What it is, it's just garbled and I don't even know the right word to characterize the audio, but it was hard. When I couldn't get a word, neither could Otter.
The direction of your speakers is interfering with your microphone. You pick up the microphone.
Otter doesn't even know its own name. I'm looking at the my text-to speech. When I mention Otter, which is doing the text-to speech.
Okay. Testing. This is a different microphone. Is it doing any better?
Better, much better.
Sure. I can get every word now.
Okay, sorry. I did not have my blue microphone selected. It was off of the Logitech cam, so that was the problem. Anyway, did any of that come through?
Well, what you were on a Logitech cam and it was that bad? Yeah. Holy shimo.
No, it's not about Logitech cam, Michael. It's like echoing from the speaker. Okay, just don't blame the equipment, blame the user.
It's the setup. Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, if I may, can I take 20 seconds to repeat what I said if you didn't get it?
Yeah, why don't you know that, because it was garbled enough.
Okay, so my point was that the errors that you see today, which I think will be quickly fixed, okay, are the same errors that I think toddlers and babies and humans go through. And whereas every human has to spend 10, 20, 30 years getting to some level of insight, competence, capacity, et cetera, what's interesting is in the AI world, you don't have to spend that overhead per entity. You can copy and replicate almost at zero cost. You can create 1 billion AIs that don't have to grow up through 10, 20, 30 years of training. And so that is the phenomenon that I think we should learn how to leverage, because that is almost arbitrarily horizontally scalable, subject to hardware. And so that, I think, is what we need to worry about, not these individual arithmetic errors.
I'll make a prediction that even in 5 years, these AIs will not be able to correctly explain what's wrong with Bell's inequality.
I will take that bet. How much you want to put up, Barry?
Let's make it $100.
Okay, $100. You're on. Virtual handshake, okay? 5 years from now, which is August 12th of 2028, we'll ask AIs to explain Bell's inequality to a level that you have done in previous such sessions. Okay? Shall we do that?
Why Bell's inequality is not, makes a bad prediction, makes a prediction that does not agree with observation. What did Bell do wrong?
Right.
What did John Stuart Bell, what mistake did John Stuart Bell make in his derivation to come up with the prediction that is incorrect?
Okay, so anyway, the quality of the response needs to be at least as good as your response to that question from these GCC sessions weeks and months ago. Can we say that's the done criteria?
Yeah, I actually posted the chat log on medium.com where I couldn't get it to correct its misconception. So there's the evidence of I couldn't sort it out with ChatGPT. I think it was 4.
Okay, I just wrote it in the chat, Barry. We'll put $100 into escrow. Okay, Sam, you want to act as escrow?
You can act as scarecrow.
Or we can put it into euros, and we'll have Heiner be escrow.
Depend $100 of the US dollar value become 10 cents.
That's right.
But we've been arguing over quantum mechanics for literally a century, and they can't sort out the mistakes in what does the math say, and they get these narrative interpretations of what the math says, and it's just unbelievably mismatched between the math and the narrative.
Okay, 5 years. You got it, Barry. Bet is on.
Now, see, in 5 years, I'll be 3 years old, 84 years old.
You better show up. You got to be present to collect, okay? Be present to win.
What health state I'll be in 5 years.
Doesn't matter. You have to be present to win, Barry.
Probably won't need you.
You're muted, Josh.
I was just going to say you don't have to wait 5 years. It'll happen in 5 months. So why don't you just check in every 5 months? And then that way Sam can win in 10 months or 15 months.
That's right.
But I think in 5 months it'll be happening. So you can win
like
that.
in 5 weeks to 5 months, as Josh is saying, some response from an AGI will be available, and I'll work with it for the next 4.5 years to improve it. So in 5 years, it'll definitely do it.
Did you guys watch the MIT lecture from Stephen Wolfram this last week?
He does lectures every week. No, I can't keep up with him.
He talks for 3 hours once a week, and it's too much. If you picked one out or a segment of one for a given week that's worth attending.
Sure. It was mostly about how he was working with OpenAI and what Wolfram Alpham's models are doing with the plugin and what it's not doing right. So once they fix that, I think it will solve the problem.
Yeah. I asked Wolfram Alpha to explain what's wrong with Bell's inequality because I don't know how to ask Wolfram Alpha anything.
And in other words, it's not that the computer doesn't understand it. It's a question of phrasing it in a way that the language model can ask the question to another model. So think of yourself as a model, a language model, Barry. If someone was to ask you, you could explain it, but then you'd have to put out the information that people understood. Yeah. So it's a question of working with 3 models, meaning yours, ChatGPT, and the functioning language that was created by Stephen Wolfram and his team. And all 3 together have to figure out why Bell's theorem is incorrect mathematically.
There's a famous snippet from Feynman, where Feynman says, now I'm going to explain how you come up with a new physics law. He says, first you make a guess, then you work out the calculation that what you would expect to see if the guess is correct. If it doesn't agree with observation or experiment, it's wrong. And he goes, it's wrong. It's like one paragraph. So that's the base. And I say, okay, John Stuart Bell, formed a hypothesis. He made a calculation. They did an experiment. It's wrong. And why do you continue to believe something that's wrong? I mean, you got this Feynman, and Feynman actually, in very elliptical writing, dismisses Bell's theorem, but he dismisses it in such a subtle way that he doesn't say why he throws it away. If you find the sentence in one paper that Feynman writes, you can't say, oh, he just comes out and says in plain English that Bell screwed up. He says basically it's irrelevant. He says Bell's theorem is irrelevant, is what he basically says. Doesn't explain why you should ignore it. Go ahead, Sam.
The reason I'm reasonably optimistic that AGI is around the corner is that I think we are basically just language models ourselves.
A lot of people are.
Yes.
A lot of people live with and for narratives. And if there is
but I'm not finished.
Oh, sorry.
So as language models, we then occasionally infer or extract or create in our minds these things called syllogisms or conclusions. And if as language models we can do this, then we can teach other language models to do this. And that's what's happening. Yeah. So reasoning is not that complicated if we're just looking at ourselves as pattern recognizing language models. And that's why I think everything we can do, a language model will eventually evolve to do. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Because I think fundamentally that's all we are. And that was the premise of neural networks when they actually came up with a premise like 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. Now, the key transformation in neural networks and what really led to all of this was a paper written in 1989. That was 34 years ago. People have been working on that transformative approach for 34 years in order to get the results that we're seeing now in the last 2-3 years. And what's so accelerating in the last several months. But that was the key change in 1989. Over.
Yeah. So you can take what looks like a syllogism, premise, therefore conclusion. And just because you say the word therefore conclusion doesn't mean the conclusion logically follows from the premises. And it's really easy to assert a syllogism, which is baloney, and not realize it's baloney.
Right. You got to test it. But, that testing pattern can also be inferred from conversation and from teaching and from literature.
So it's easy to, and this is another thing Feynman says. It says you're the easiest person to fool. First principles, don't fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. And I see that all the time. And I point out, how do you know you're not fooling yourself? Sam, you got your hand up.
Just for 1 or 2 minutes, I want to come back to this topic, but just for 1 or 2 minutes, can I take a small digression since Arthur C. Clarke was such an integral part of today's conversation?
Sure.
What else is happening in cosmology and in science that is reminiscent of something that Arthur C. Clarke predicted?
Say it again.
What else did Arthur C. Clarke in his writing, what else did he predict that may be happening now?
Well, the geosynchronous satellites, he worked out geosynchronous satellites.
Okay, fine. Good. Something else. I'm looking for something else. Geosynchronous satellites have been around for 30 or 40 years.
Well, he basically said what they were going to be.
Nah, something else. Not geosynchronous satellites that I'm thinking about.
So something else. What's the predicate?
That Arthur C. Clarke asked what if in some of his writing that may be happening like right now.
Oh, I'd have to pause and ponder that. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know what.
I'll give you a guess, okay? It has to do with space, not on the Earth. Oh, sorry, hint. It has to do with space.
With the physics or the humans in space?
I'm just curious if we're talking about ionizing drives.
I'm not talking about that. So if he predicted that,
Okay.
that's great. That's another thing, but that's not what I'm referring to. He's brilliant. He projected all kinds of what if scenarios, but there's this one that is happening that many people have not even heard about. I'll give you another very strong hint if you want to. It'll almost give it away.
Listening.
All right. The key word that describes this thing is a Hawaiian word.
A Hawaiian word.
Yes.
I don't know too many Hawaiian words, so I'm good.
Okay. All right. So
Hawaiian alphabet. It's got to be H, L, and K.
may I disclose? Okay. All right. How many of you guys have heard of this the seemingly asteroid-like object called Oumuamua.
Oh, the one that came from another solar system?
Yes. And what's odd about it?
Well, there's two things were odd: its shape and the fact that it was on a hyperbolic trajectory, which is the reason we believe it's extra solar. Is that
yes,
right?
It's an extremely unusual orbit. It appeared to speed up in a way that was not explainable. And it has reappeared. It's visited, it's come within the Earth's orbit twice now. And so now
it's not hyperbolic, it's elliptical.
Yeah. So that's why, Arthur Clarke wrote this series of books called Rendezvous with Rama. It's not his best well-known work, but his premise was that a very, very large alien-produced spaceship in the shape of an asteroid visits the Earth. And he writes this series of books called Rendezvous, because the rendezvous is when Earth meets this asteroid. Anyway, that's what I think many people are actually referring to Rendezvous with Rama as Arthur Clarke's prediction of Oumuamua.
More as I understand it, was a hyperbolic, not a elliptical. And it doesn't revisit.
If it were, then how would it return?
That wouldn't return.
That's right.
That's the whole point of hyperbolic, is it doesn't return.
So anyway, I could be wrong. I'll apologize in advance if I am, but I believe what I recall from the articles is that it is a very strange behavior. It is not just standard, astrodynamics that explains its behavior. There appears to be something else at work.
Well, the speeding, inbound, I'm pretty sure it speeds up inbound and then
but we can explain that through gravity, okay? So
right.
If they could explain it through gravity, they wouldn't call it odd.
Well, who's calling it odd? People who do the math or people who are just speculating?
Let me go find some articles here.
Because there's an awful lot of baloney that people put out where the math is just nonsense. They make assertions where doesn't agree with the math.
Yeah, I would look at Avi Loeb's work because I think he was the one that got most popular for really getting into some crazy ideas of what Oumuamua is. But it is very interesting. I was trying to bring this up actually about a year ago here at GCC because I found it very strange that maybe it's staying where it is and we're moving through it. It's moving as well relative to us, but it's also been hanging out in that section of space and we've moved towards it. And that's a really interesting concept.
You should be able to get the same math regardless of frame of reference. Although if it's a non-inertial frame of reference, then maybe you got to be real careful. And we're all because the solar system is orbiting the center of the galaxy, that's non-inertial frame of reference.
Okay,
Exactly.
I'm seeing another article in May of this year that attempts to explain the odd behavior. Here's the link. See, it says, oddly, this interstellar object appeared to be slightly accelerating in a way that normally is associated with the outgassing of some kind of material, but astronomers couldn't detect any comet-like tail of dust or gas.
Well, slight means that it's down in the noise regime of the measurement. I wouldn't take that as dispositive of anything. Slight. The hell? Put some numbers and some error bars on it.
So in May, this may have been debunked. So let me correct my misconception if so. But what is it now, August? Yeah, so that was only 3 months ago.
If it had merit, it would persist in literature. If it appears and disappears from literature, then they quietly stop talking about a mistake. People tend to make mistakes, hype them, and then stop talking about them when they realize it's baloney.
Anyway, what I find interesting is now that the US in theory, has declassified its information around UFOs. If it were really so easy for us to come up with smart machines and for us to be so close to AGI, I'm curious why these alien objects that crashed on the Earth would have not been full of such artificial intelligence and have been somewhat smarter. I think about these crashes as some alien billionaire let his toddler son or teenage son, take the ship out for a ride, and they crashed it on Earth. It's probably what happened. Anyway, I'll stop speculating. We can go back to the original topic. I just thought I'd bring up this Oumuamua thing because Arthur C. Clarke was so prescient in some of his predictions. Maybe not this one, but it'll happen soon. Over.
Is he still alive or is he died now?
I don't know. Let's check it out. I think he lived on Sri Lanka or Ceylon.
He lived in Sri Lanka. He got the hell out of, was it the U.S. or Britain? I'm not sure where he lived. I think because his tax dodge issues or some crazy thing about not wanting the government to get all his money or some crazy thing like that. Not that that's crazy, but.
So he died in 2008, March 18th.
Oh, quite a long time ago then.
Yeah, that's 15 years ago.
Years ago. In Sri Lanka. Does it say why he went to Sri Lanka? To get away from.
Let me read.
The girlfriend.
At his age, mate, well, actually, I don't know when he went to Sri Lanka.
Immigrated to Ceylon to pursue his interest in scuba diving. In 1956, that year he discovered the underwater ruins of the ancient original Konaswaram temple in Trincomalee.
Doesn't explain why.
He's a scuba diver.
Is Ceylon a country or a town in Sri Lanka?
It is now Sri Lanka. It got renamed from Ceylon to Sri Lanka.
Name of the same place. Okay.
Yeah, that's what Wikipedia says.
So you just went there to scuba dive.
That's what this Wikipedia article says.
I don't believe anything Wikipedia says. It's written by people who are not sources of reliable information.
Who police themselves vigorously.
Well,
Of course they do.
That's what they exist to do, is to, reject contributions unless they meet certain conduct and standards.
You know the story of how I exposed one of the worst offenders on Wikipedia.
Yes, you've told it, I think, I don't know, a few times.
Yeah. Not a source of reliable information. Nassori.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring up another thing that Arthur C. Clarke had predicted that, if not this time, will soon, in my opinion, happen.
He was a smarty. There's no question about it.
By the way, when you made that reference, Barry, I put another literary work in here. It's called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Are you familiar with that book / idea?
Yeah, is that Heinlein or is that
No,
Brad?
it's not Heinlein.
Is it Bradbury? Who wrote that?
It's not Bradbury.
I never remember who wrote what.
I'll give you another hint. It was turned into a very, very famous movie. Do androids dream of electric sheep? I didn't understand that question for years. But it's the title of this book.
I don't know that I read the book or saw any movie based on it. I just know of the title.
Okay, I'll tell you. It was Philip K. Dick, and the movie is Blade Runner.
Oh, well, I saw Blade Runner, but I didn't.
Blade Runner was inspired by this book called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick.
Blade Runner is a very violent movie, as I recall.
Somewhat, yeah. But it's also a very sad movie. It actually has to do with this theme that we're talking about intelligence and AI and androids.
And the lack of artificial wisdom, because if you have intelligence, it has to be tempered with wisdom, which usually comes very, very late.
Okay, so the piece of wisdom that they attempted in this book / movie is because they could not predict how these androids would behave, they intentionally built into them a limitation to their lifespan, which is only 5 years, something like that. So every Android that was produced knew that it was only going to live for 5 years. And that's the premise of the book.
Did they know how to did the Blade Runner androids know how to reproduce?
Not in Blade Runner, but that is the key theme in Blade Runner, the sequel, Blade Runner 2042. That is a very good question.
Because that exactly is the theme of the sketch or the play that Roz Picard wrote. She wrote a play in which the humans have gone extinct, the AIs are left, and the AIs in her story also have a finite lifetime, and they're down to the last 2 of them, and they haven't figured out how to reproduce yet.
Yeah. By the way, there are also Star Trek episodes based on these questions.
Yeah.
And ask your friend whether they've watched Blade Runner 2042, the sequel.
Oh, Roz? I'd have to ask her. I don't know.
Yeah. It asks a very good question.
She wrote that play, I think, in the early 90s. I had written a drama of 2 self-programming autonomous AI computers, and she wrote a much better one. There was a course between MIT and Harvard that was between the Harvard School of Divinity or Philosophy and MIT. There was a seminar called God and Computers, and she wrote this play for that seminar, God and Computers. So there's a theological aspect, and the theological aspect is these surviving AIs deny that there ever were any humans who created them, and so it's towards machines who can deny their maker. That was the theological analogy to humans who don't believe that they had a maker. She worked the theological issue into this.
Anyway, for those here on the session who have not yet seen Blade Runner or Blade Runner, the sequel, if you're interested in these questions, I recommend you rewatch Blade Runner and then watch the sequel.
Yeah, I know that I saw Blade Runner like 30 years ago. I don't remember much.
You won't remember much about it. It's worth rewatching.
And certainly not the sequel. When I had a bunch of young kids come and stay with me back in the early 90s, they rented the movie and we watched it, but it didn't appeal to me. So
what is the most important thing that top 2 or 3 things that I should be watching for in watching that movie?
yeah, he went to make coffee, so I don't think he's necessarily.
I mean, some of you can answer that question. Oh.
I can't answer.
Yeah, I could answer. I've seen the movie about 30 or 50 times, and then I was the first one in the theater when the new one came out. But I think the real question is, what does it mean to be an artificially intelligent being with general intelligence? And then how do you live amongst humans and interact? I think that, to me, that's the biggest question of that movie is, what does it mean to be conscious? It starts with the Turing test, was the opening scene of the movie.
Mm.
And then it also starts with understanding that there are violent androids that have become conscious and have left the program and gone off the colony where they were put to keep them safe. So in other words, what does it mean to be conscious? I think that's the real question we keep. If you get into any intellectual debate, whether it be physics or science or sociology, it all comes down to what is consciousness, and no one can answer that question. Whether it be Donald Hoffman or I don't know who the latest consciousness experts are, whether it's Ram Dass or I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
It's a very simple question from my perspective, is that conscious in multiple perspectives. So if you're conscious about what, your feelings, your emotions, conscious about your environment, conscious about things. So if you chunk it down, conscious is meaning that you understand, you're aware, you know what to you experience it. I mean, think of it like you're mindfully engaging in whatever you're doing as conscious. So that would be simple. I think I mentioned to you guys 4 years ago, I co-created the organization called Conscious Leadership Guild. and
Yes.
And it's not a struggle if you chunk it down is the best way to do it. Think of it like you turn on the light, when you walk into a dark room, it's no different than you're unconscious, so you turn on the light, even with the candle, you're now be aware of so they don't knock things down, you don't hurt yourself, you don't trip, and you don't, bang your head against something. So conscious means you're aware. It means that you care about yourself. And so we always focus on the greater goods, between our conversation right now. How could you think of it that when I say something that for your interest, that will keep you interested, engaging conversation with me. If I say something that is not interest to you, I can say, and I can listen to myself, and then pretty soon you get dropped off, you won't be able to engage in the conversation. So the conscious means that I do pay attention to our conversation. I do keep track of the feedback. I do keep track of what can I do so that I can be interested to keep the attention. I mean, a lot of those things like when you're driving, you need to be conscious to be driving. Okay, if you're not conscious about you're driving, you're going to hit someone, you're going to crash your car, you're going to drive into a cliff, all that stuff. So conscious to me means be aware, be engaging, pay attention to the feedback, always focus on the greater goods. It's sort of like a short answer to a complex question.
Applied model-based reasoning. You've got a model of the world around you, you've got a self model, and you've got a model of how you interact with the world around you. And it's the epitome of model-based reasoning.
Yeah. I'll just add to that and say there's different levels of awareness and levels of feedback. Like Barry often uses the car analogy. So the idea of how many different things you're controlling in the car. Is it just gas, brake, and steering wheel? Or are there many other feedback mechanisms? In other words, I look at our bodies as a spaceship, and we're not the only ones in the spaceship. There's a lot of microbiotic little creatures that are here with us. So our spaceship is made up of an organic material, but we call it by an individual name. But it's really not an individual thing. It's just interacting with the space around us.
Right.
So when I'm walking through the air, it's like soup, but then there's soup on my skin. But this skin is changing, the air is changing, and then I'm sucking in some of that and pumping it into the blood that's changing. And it's this amazing, I call it a spaceship, because it's like some sort of vehicle that I have to maintain and that over time breaks down, but I can travel in many places and it can create its own energy, which is kind of awesome, but I can only create so much because I'm using what's inside of my spaceship, which is the water and oxygen and carbon, and I need to replenish it to keep it moving. I mean, if you think of yourself not as an individual, but as a part of a whole thing, that's one level of consciousness. But if you think of yourself as separate from everything, that's another level of consciousness. And I think that's the real question. I think what you said, Sam, about being aware of the other individuals in the room is a great layer of consciousness. And I'll just leave it at that. I'm complete.
Yeah.
Also, the other level is, I mean, no matter how you look at it, so self-preservation, survival, I can continue to breathe. Those are, we were talking about last language model. Okay, yes, we are human beings, we are last language model, but with the ultimate hidden agenda. I want to live tomorrow, or I want to live the day after, whatever. So that's one thing. The other thing about the joke of artificial intelligence, if you think about it carefully, artificial intelligence in the software is trying to emulate a human being. We are the human being, so we are the intelligent, except that we have a goal, we have self-preservation, we need to survive. So it's a survival-driven, artificial intelligence. You want to think of it that way. I'm complete.
And we want to
Do you mind, Barry, if I interject?
Go ahead.
I just really would love to share with you the video that I watched. It's Aza Rob, I think his name is, about communication, whale communication. But what he showed was the visual of the language models themselves. So I don't think it's creating a human. I think it's creating a translation between every single discipline in computer science, whether it be image detection, sound, text, so on and so forth, algorithmic, ones and zeros. It's a Rosetta Stone, if you will, to translate that into natural language and then back into something else. And that's what I think we're creating, is the primer of a language that we can talk to mathematics using natural language, or a language that we can talk to a visual, such as, say, a picture with edge detection, by saying, I would like a red-headed lady in a forest with the light streaming down of this. And it's like we're speaking in E equals MC squared, but then what's behind it is really awesome. So I'm saying, to me, it's that interpretation between understanding the language model so well that you can paint a picture with each little pixel at high resolution using, say, ray tracing to bounce the light off of millions of different points to create a picture with just 5 to 10 words in a sentence. That is, I'm sorry, my mind is blown that we've actually found the primer to every language, not just human languages, but all languages throughout the universe. Mathematics, sound, you name it. So I really beg you to check out this video, and then we could talk about it afterwards, because it was very well, clearly communicated in a very small amount of information. Maybe only watch 5 minutes of where he explains how language changes how we interact with hey, Siri, be quiet. See, Siri's trying to get in on this. All of the disciplines of AI have merged into one, and that's why I'm excited. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you. I'm complete.
Like taking Morse code, that is telegraph clicks, and not just modulating one parameter short and long, but modulating all possible ways to modulate clicks. So you can have short, fast clicks, long clicks, slow clicks, gaps between clicks, every way that you can modulate the clickiness of a telegraph. This is what we think, for example, whales are doing. They're basically a multi-modulated Morse code.
And I think that's what humans are doing. We're just a multi-modular Morse code of language.
Right. We're modulating phonemes.
That's it.
There's only 30 some phonemes that are distinguishable. And we learn to articulate phonemes that make syllables, and syllables that make words, and words that make phrases, and predicates and sentences. And it's all down to, just a sequence of phonemes that can be modulated and decoded.
Keep in mind that we are only be able to see a very small spectrum of lights, hear a very small spectrum of audio, and you know what. So we have a huge blind spot. Right. Okay, just keep that in mind, that the phony that we have is just a tiniest, like almost like a sand on the beach.
We have very narrow bandwidth. Humans have a very low bandwidth, narrow bandwidth. And there's all these perception studies in psychology of how little we perceive of, what's all the signals coming in. Most of it's noise. Most of it is not decoded as conveying any meaningful information.
No, not only that, I want to add something. We can only live in certain temperature range. We have to be at certain temperature range. We can only eat certain food when it's cooked well, properly. We can only breathe air when it's clean. All that, think of all the tiny things. That's what I'm saying by we're like a little sand on the beach. That all the constraints, all the limitations.
And a small perturbation in the environmental conditions can have very dramatic long-term effects. Including extinction.
Yep.
Sam?
So given that, what's our responsibility? Is it to survive in the same form that we're in, or to evolve so that we can actually survive in a much wider set of conditions?
Adapt and
If
evolve.
the latter, then we have to change ourselves organically in significant ways.
Or go extinct.
That, by the way, and that is not going to take place randomly according to just the currently understood evolutionary process. It's got to be intentional with our own participation.
And a lot
Can I
of
still say one more thing on that one? And if it's intentional, how many things do we intend to do we get right the first time?
none.
None. So there's going to be many mistakes made. And that
And a lot of premature deaths.
is a lot of interesting but potentially very negative scenarios.
Civilizations can go extinct, species can go extinct, tribes can go extinct. I mean, you know, there's going to be a lot of extinctions at different scales and levels.
We've had many extinctions already, and we ourselves are going to be again extinct. Now the question is, what will survive and, you know, beyond us?
Something maybe called transhuman, where it's a hybrid between technology and organic creatures, possibly is some kind of a transhuman or transbiological. I mean, already almost every creature has plastic integrated into the organs of their body as structural elements. They went down to the Mariana Trench, which is the deepest part of the ocean, and they found a crustacean down there that they'd never seen before, and they gave it a name. I forget the name of it, but the second part of the name is plasticus, because it had plastic, microplastics and nanoplastics in every organ of its body, all the way from the Mariana Trench. I mean, we had strontium in our body because of the atmospheric A-bomb tests in the 1960s. We put calcium on our body to make bones. That's just a mineral. Pretty much all the minerals end up, the ones that we don't want are like mercury and lead. They turn out to be bad choices. They displace iron, which you need for the blood, and so on. So a lot of minerals get into the system, and some end up making us stronger, and a lot of them basically are toxic. A lot of the minerals screw up the nervous system. Things like mercury, for example. So we're going to have to learn to adapt and protect ourselves from the toxins. And if we don't, we'll go extinct in something. I mean, the plants will survive. They can deal with all this carbon dioxide in the air. They don't care. They live off of carbon dioxide. They were producing oxygen as a waste product, and then the animals came along and took the oxygen and made it a positive input. Whereas the plants, they were creating fires because they were producing oxygen as a waste product, and the oxygen would combine with the lightning and burn up the plants, like in Hawaii. So you have this very delicate balance between producing some waste product and the other one using it as an input. Small perturbations in that balance can be disastrous. What are we doing for time? It's 12:25, so we've got about 35 minutes. And I'm still recording on my local computer, Sam.
Thanks, Barry. When I rejoined, I also started recording myself.
Oh, well then.
So you probably have about 10 or 15 minutes extra on top of what I've got.
Should I stop recording at this
No, I'd like for you to, if you would, record the whole thing and then share it with me, if that's
All
okay.
right. Because I started recording at the 15-minute after the start mark. And I'll have to upload that to wherever I upload it to. I forget now. Maybe Google Drive, I think.
So it may be a little bit early, but let me just, as an aside, say I'm back to my regular weekly rhythm to California, but September 25th, I'm again going to be out of country for about 3 weeks. I'll be 1 week in London and then 2 weeks in India again, coming back around October 15th or 16th. FYI.
Well, we don't have to meet every Saturday and Sunday if there's not enough.
No, but so long as people seem willing, I want to make sure that they're able to.
Yeah. You might end up with just Sam Chan and me talking about some very narrow topic.
That's Sprout.
For 3 weeks. Else to tears.
If you want to keep it simple, maybe you can give Barry the login name and password to log in. So there will be things a lot easier to free you up from trying to in the middle of the night.
There's that feature of giving somebody admin rights. You have to go to the Zoom website and give me or somebody what's called admin rights so that they can add.
Last I checked, they also have to be paid users under my account.
Oh, so it's like a team. It's like a team account. Because I have 3 free accounts now. I have a Google ID, Facebook ID, and Apple ID free accounts. And that's because they limit me to 40 minutes of a free session. So I do a 40-minute session and then we switch to one of my other accounts for the continuation. Otherwise, you have to wait 10 minutes to have a second session.
I mean, not about the 10-minute section. They didn't used to do that.
No, they did it without notice. So I was hosting an account in 40 minutes expires and everybody tries to reconnect and I get a notice, you have to wait 10 minutes.
Anyway, I was just bleeping through the names here. I noticed Kayla's back. Kayla, want to say hi?
Oh, I've been here all along. I've been listening to you guys. Hello. Hi.
I thought you had dropped for a while, so I was wondering. I wasn't aware that you had reached.
No, I was like the whole time I was listening to you guys.
It's amazing.
Hi again.
Because we also haven't seen Stacy for like a month now.
I'm teaching a class I'm teaching a class, the mastermind class from 10 to 4 today. So I'm going to drop off and get something to eat and all that stuff. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay?
Awesome, Sam. If there's anybody there I know, please say hi for me.
I'll do that. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Okay, I think in 2 weeks you're going to be up here in Seattle, right?
Yeah, I am there for a short amount of time because Maxwell's school actually starts on the 22nd. So unfortunately, I couldn't take that Thursday off. So it'll just be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, leaving Monday. But I'm trying to find a plane ticket out on Sunday so that I could save some money. If we're not going to do the tourist thing, might as well just kind of take off a little early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you should come. You should come watch our competition.
I've got it on the calendar. I'll see if I can do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
This is the dance competition?
Yeah. I'm sending 3 of my dancers into competition.
Cool.
And it'll be my first time as a group leader engaging in the group activities. So that'll be fun. I have to go into a meeting at 8:15 with all of the group leaders. And I don't know what we're going to discuss, but it's really interesting. And then the morning of the actual competition, I have to dress in all white to bless the stage along with the other group leaders. So that'll be fun.
And you're just bringing Maxwell, not Damien?
No, Damien has band camp, and he kind of doesn't want to go. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't drag Maxwell either, but he would rather come with me instead of stay with his grandparents. So, he's my little mini me.
Mm-hmm.
Me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How far is your
wanna...
place,
what?
Sam? How far is your place from Seattle again? How far are you?
Depends on traffic. If there's not a lot of traffic, I can get to the northern boundary of Seattle in about 80 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Approximately. But
dang it.
SeaTac, the airport that is south of Seattle, on a bad day, it's taken me 3 hours. I had to take my mom to the airport one time, and it was like in morning rush hour traffic, and it took 3 hours. So anywhere from like 80 minutes to 100, 180 minutes? Yeah.
Terrible.
Okay, everybody I know is far from Seattle, so I'm sad. I don't know if I should bunk up with my friend. I forgot where she's at, but she said she's a good hour past Seattle because my flight on Monday is at like 6 a.m. So I have to be at SeaTac by 4.
Yep.
So I'm trying to weigh the options of free versus tired.
At least there won't be any traffic at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in that case, it makes most sense to stay that last night somewhere near the airport. You have to get up that early.
Anyway, I don't mean to disrupt your conversation.
Well, we're at kind of a good breaking point, right? We've just gotten through a number of things, and we're just looking for something else to talk about. Or we don't have to force it either,
We're all talked out.
I would say,
my topics are very human-centric. So it was fascinating listening to you guys about the AI because that's what the Writers Guild is striking about. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but there's been a double strikes going on with SAG-AFTRA and the WGA. And so anyways, there's this discussion about AI creating some of these scripts for the studios. And I personally don't think that's feasible. I mean, I think we do need creativity. And if I'm wrong, I mean, AI, doesn't it learn its content from us and keep learning and generating the content?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see how AI can take over, some of the writing of the studios. I think you're always going to need writers.
Yeah, see, I'm not quite so clear on that one myself. I think that the way these things learn, they can extrapolate. If they were only capable of interpolation, I would agree with you, but they can extrapolate, which means they can actually go beyond what they've seen. Humans do it as well. And so we have to figure out, how much of creativity is observation, how much of it is interpretation, how much of it is extrapolation.
But how far beyond can they see? Sorry. Like how much can they extrapolate? That's what I kind of don't understand.
Josh has an answer.
It's hybrid. It's putting together that don't normally go together, and making some kind of a hybrid that is intriguing.
I was just going to share with you, Kayla, there's a new video on the YouTube, which is Google using a thing called TextFX. And it's the rapper Lupe Fiasco writing a brand new song with the tool. So he's extrapolating, it's his brain, he's doing it. but he's using this writing tool to find words that mesh and move and similes and scenes. And it's open to the public. You can check it out. I'll put it in the chat, but it's a wonderful tool to help writers. So to me, it would take a room full of, say, 70 writers and narrow it down to maybe 3. And that's what's going on with the SAG-AFTRA. And that's only one aspect. The other thing that's really amazing is imagine all the extras in movies never having to go on set. They usually pay them about $200 per person, but you could just go in and get paid $500 for your likeness and be used as an extra in hundreds of movies. So that's changing things quickly. And yeah, it's very interesting, but I'll put the text.fx because I just found it in the videos on the homepage. So I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the whole background people with the likeness. Just because it's the studios are saying it's in perpetuity, but it is very fascinating. I mean, I myself am trying to get my group together to take photos, and my sister found this app that's AI, and they were she was saying, why don't you just use this for your dance group and don't hire like a photographer? And to be honest, I get it. Like a part of me is just like, maybe I could do that and save a ton of money. But anyways, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole AI thing in terms of the strike. But anyways, no big deal.
Well, it is a big deal. It's going to happen in every area of human work.
I keep
the art. Go ahead, Barry.
I keep wanting to be replaced. I'd like to retire. There are certain that I can do that are such rare things. And because I don't ask for money, people want me to do things which they can't do, and I can, and I'd rather they learn how to do it. And so I don't have to be there every week to do to run a portable TV studio for a Zoom meeting. It's back to Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message. These groups gather to give talks to each other, little practice speaking, and really it's about the medium. It's not about the content of what you're saying to the other person. It's about the medium that enables you to have a conversation. They have to master the medium.
Speaking on the medium, are you guys following what X.com is doing?
Well, it's going to hell in a handbasket. That's what I mean by what it's doing.
What it's evolving into, what its new technologies are, what it's giving to creators in order to incentivize them to use their video platform and maybe jump away from YouTube, what they're doing with one payment system, the whole plan of rebranding and moving it to an all-in-one app is quite in effect. And the CEO, Linda Yaccarino, was just interviewed talking about what's going on. And I thought she did a great job explaining her partnership with Elon.
I've seen rumors, but they're just rumors, so there's no substance to them.
Well, Elon's wanted to make it a payment platform for quite a long time.
Yeah, I think the substance is go on as a creator and start creating and see if you can get paid, because it might be the next new thing. It might just die and turn into nothing, but it's worth checking out. It's kind of like getting in on Twitter. I remember I made my first Twitter account. I think it was 2007, 2008, and it sucked. It was stupid. It made no sense to me. Microblogging, this thing will never take off. I played with it for about 2 months and then turned it off and thought it was the dumbest thing ever. So boy, was I wrong.
You probably don't know what's happening on Facebook, but as people are migrating away from Facebook, and there's less and less content from your own community, guess what's turning up in my feed that is not people?
AI pornography?
Close. Cheesecake. I am getting probably every fifth or sixth item in a news feed is some gorgeous, curvaceous actress in a bikini, with sort of revealing. And I'm going, why am I getting tons and tons of cheesecake? And I realized because that's all that's left. They're trying to fill up the news feed with something, and they're feeding us all cheesecake. At least the males. I don't know what they're feeding the females.
Well, I wonder if people are really aware that AI started in 2006 with these algorithms to make engagement on the social media platforms. So they're getting really smart. They know that you like cheesecake.
Well, I mean, how do they figure that out? Because I'm waiting to read something interesting from my correspondence. I keep getting, Charlize Theron, and I can't remember the names of all these, Wonder Woman, and why am I suddenly getting all these cheesecake photos? It's all there is. There's nothing left to show. No new content.
No, it's just no new content for you. You've been stuck in that little bubble of they believe that'll create the most engagement for their company, for Facebook and Meta. Yeah. Watch The Social Dilemma Part 4, and you'll see.
That been recorded yet? Produced yet?
No, it has not been released because it doesn't exist. I just made it up, and that's me trolling you. Okay. And that's what the companies are doing, is what I'm trying to say. It's a large troll of, we know exactly how, hey, come here, little chocolate girl. They know exactly how long you've spent before you scrolled up on different photos and different things. And they put that into an algorithm, matched it across every single picture you've ever looked at on Instagram, matched it across every single picture you've ever looked at on any link that was linked out of Facebook. I mean, the algorithms are quite complex and amazing. It's much like these large language models. They're creating, it's called a graph of you, an open graph of everything that you're interested in. It's really powerful. It's really awesome. All I can say is kudos on them for working it out and making billions of dollars.
At some point, I think Facebook is going to become so banal and so free of interesting content that people like me are going to have to go find something else to fill up their daytime with. Not sure what it's going to be yet.
Well, the more you use it, I think it's really key is to go onto groups like our GCC group and other groups and start using places that you've never used on Facebook and change that news feed and change that algorithm like it. Yeah. And then it will start becoming fun again.
On the other hand, Sam keeps pointing out that every time I bring something up, he says, oh yeah, I remember that. You've talked about that 17 times in the last 3 years. Yeah. So, probably boring people.
I'm curious about that, actually. Do you find that you restate the point differently, or do you do it because you think, I don't remember?
No, it's not that I'm aiming at you. I'm aiming at other people. People turn up in some thread with they've discovered chaos or they discovered something. And I said, oh yeah, I've got a whole little essay on that I wrote 17 years ago. Here it is. And of course, people who have known me for a long time say, oh, here, Barry's going to show us the same old thing he keeps showing. But it's because new people are coming on board that haven't seen it before.
Yeah, I do that too.
I'm not writing that much new material anymore.
Cool. Well, like I said, I was inspired this morning in the shower. I'm going to write the thing up. I'm going to diagram it. Yeah. I'm not promising, but I may have something on it tomorrow. If not, it'll be next weekend.
What I can tell you is in my life, the thing that gets people's attention is not new content. It's a new medium in which you express the content. So every time there was a new medium, people would start paying attention because I would simply encode the same message in the new medium. And it was the medium that drew their attention, not the content.
Barry, play with the internet like it was 1996. Come play with me. There's so many new little spaces. Meta is just, it's old, it's outdated. Like there's so much new awesomeness out there.
Well, the multimedia stuff, and so being able to do animations, like in the old days at Bell Laboratories, I would spend literally a month on a $100,000 machine to do a 3-minute animation. Well, I'm not going to do that today, but maybe if I get to the point where I can do an interesting animation in 10 minutes, that's going to be a 1-minute animation, maybe, but I'm not there yet. I haven't, either the technology isn't there or I'm not there to exercise the technology that is there.
You're not there, the technology is there. Yes, Pete. It's there, Barry, if you want to play with it. Check out Leonardo.ai, Runway, ML, you name it. All these things are just about to get to the point, like Sam was saying. In 5 months, you go to ChatGPT that's connected to DALL-E, et cetera, so on and so forth, and you say, I want a 30-second animation of this model, of this thing specifically, but I want it in the style of Brown, Blue, 123, whatever that website is, and it will do it. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I just put something into my mouth. Look, the dream.
No problem.
The fantasy will be to take one of my favorite science fiction books, which has not yet been turned into a movie. I throw it into movie.gpt, and it comes up with a screenplay. It comes up with a suggestion for actors. It comes up with the entire script, and then it renders it into an actual movie. And then I can tweak every single scene and emphasize this, de-emphasize that, add this detail, add that detail, and make a movie out of my favorite book. And I think before a year or two are out, I think we're going to be able to do that.
I've written a couple of manuscripts that are book length that could be raw material, but they're probably going to be hard to turn into a story because they're too damn technical and too mathematical, too abstract. I tend to be on the abstract end of the stories. Have to be very concrete. And I am not concrete. I'm very abstract. And that is why it's so bloody hard to turn anything that right into a story.
And I know that is exactly the point that Kale was bringing up about the concern of AI and their impact on SAG and WGA, et cetera.
Yeah.
But that is what people will be able to do.
Well, that's people who write stories have to have characters who have scenes with other characters, that have dialogues with other characters and sketches. And that's something that people like me, an engineer, never learned to do. That we were learning to make technology work, which doesn't have people in it, has electronic circuits or whatever. And that we had the medium and not the human characters.
Are you saying your writing is boring?
Yes. Most people couldn't even tell you where to find anything I wrote, let alone know what it means or remember it. Because
I found everything you wrote. No, I found your blog.
I mean, if you could turn what I wrote into dance, be my guest. I can't imagine how that could be done. Escher,
I haven't given that a thought.
Escher could turn into graphic art a lot of very abstract things, but he was very rare. I mean, you look at Escher and go, how the devil can he do that? But he did. And Bach can turn very abstract things into musical motifs. And so when Hofstadter writes Gödel, Escher, Bach, you take Kurt Gödel, who wrote very, very esoteric mathematical stuff. And he says, Escher did the same message in graphic art, and Bach did the same message in music. And he was right. How do they do that? He didn't have a fourth person who did it in dance, but he could have had Fred Astaire, maybe, or Gene Kelly somehow showed that they did the same story in dance.
I think the argument with the WGA and the background actors and the actors in general is when I went to Tyra's husband's party, they had a wonderful conversation about AI. And one of the actresses who did a commercial with this big name actor. I don't know who, she wouldn't say who, and I didn't care. But anyway, they did a commercial together for, let's say, like Coke. And, you know, there's a different brand under Coke. And so they did that commercial together. And suddenly she turned on the TV and she found that her likeness, her face, was on another commercial that was under the same brand. And she never saw a penny from it. And so when they look over the contract, they omit that part where they utilize your likeness in perpetuity. You know, at first they thought it was something normal for, you know, actors to get, okay, we're going to have your front face scanned, your side scanned, et cetera, et cetera. Then they realized that now they can put an actor's likeness on television without their consent. Same with dead people. You know, a lot of people just think that's morally, you know, wrong, of course. And with background actors, sure, I mean, the pay might be good for one, you know, background piece, but the studios own your likeness in perpetuity. That's their whole thing, you know. And there's not very many big time studios out there. There's probably about 5, you know, major studios that all they have to do is use your likeness once and then pay you $500 as opposed to pay you $200 10 times. And so that's the argument. It's kind of like, hey, you're taking the jobs away from us. And a lot of actors really don't make that much. I mean, I'm lucky that my son has a nice bank account right now. And as his mom, I can provide for him and liquidate his cash so it grows and invested at a young age. But a lot of these adults, they could barely be paid the minimum to get healthcare from SAG. And that's really scary for all of the union workers on SAG. So that's the argument in the industry as I know it, coming from, you know, the agencies themselves.
Go ahead, Sam.
I think this started way back when companies like Yahoo and Google were allowed to index every text object on the internet. Nobody ever brought up, other than me, I did bring up. And in fact, I refused to join a company when they pitched me that business plan because I said, how are you going to get around copyright laws? Nobody else brought up copyright laws. Yahoo was able to do what they did. Google was able to do what they did. Alta Vista did what they did. Nobody brought up copyright laws. And that astonished me. It's like, we want this convenience, and therefore we're going to circumvent that aspect of the law. Same thing here in this whole likeness issue. You know, and now people are bringing up this, you know, rights issue and who owns the likeness. But why did the bleep was it not done for these big search engines? I think that was the first, and that was basically the downward slope. Because if you didn't protect those rights, that's precedent for now violating people's likeness rights as well.
Oh, and I'm so sorry, I need to interject this part of it. What about those really bad, you know, black market rings where you can take the likeness of a child and put it on, you know, somebody masturbating or something? It's disgusting. And unfortunately, in my line of work, I have to look at all the stats and look at stuff like that too, where children, young kids, babies, their likeness is being stolen because a parent is harmlessly putting their child's face on the internet. And it's going in that nasty black market ring or whatever it's called, that just disgusting place where all these perverts want to, you know, jack off and fantasize. It's going in there. I mean, so the whole thing's screwed up. AI is fascinating, don't get me wrong, but there's got to be some really strong laws in place to take a person's likeness. And I don't even know where to begin, because the law cannot protect these children because we still we don't have any laws for that. We don't know like which country or which state, even for that matter, a criminal could be tried, or where they're coming from. So it's just a shit show in that respect. So that's a huge problem.
I'm pretty sure that all those female actors from the 1930s, that those cheesecake photos are coming up. Ida Lupino came up today. I happen to remember the name because she was an actress who, you know, I can remember seeing on television in the 1950s, but who, you know, who's finding these cheesecake photos of Ida Lupino and putting them up on Facebook? So they're Joshua knows.
No, I apologize. I thought when you said cheesecake, I'm so out of understanding. I thought you meant an actual picture of an actual cheesecake from a cheesecake factory. I didn't know that was. Now I'm just starting to realize you're talking about scantily clad women, because I apologize. I thought you were getting advertised that you like cheesecake.
This is not that kind of edible cheesecake. You know, fishnet stockings and curvaceous blondes. I don't remember. They got these. I mean, they're suddenly flooding, you know, the news feed on Facebook, and all the people are fleeing. And Canada is blocking Facebook from putting up news stories for some reason I don't quite understand. So there's this sudden gap in what is being fed, and they're being filled in with these, you know, 1930s actresses when they were 20 years old in these cheesecake photos. Go ahead, Sam.
2 points, and then I'll probably say goodbye for this morning. One is that, in my opinion, the only way to fight this dark web stuff that Kayla was talking about is a small little team of other AI intelligence entities. They can go and search tirelessly and go figure out where this stuff is happening, and then, you know, figure out how to deal with it. So I think that we can use tools. They can be weaponized, you know, one way or another. And we have to just stay on top of this learning curve. It's just inevitable that we have to do this. So that's point number one. Point number two, which I guess I just now forgot because I was talking about point number one. I guess I'll bring it back later if I can. I'm having another senior moment.
The club.
And hello to Digvijay. I think maybe the time frames are off, but good to see Digvijay on the call.
Yeah, we're coming up on the 2-hour mark here too.
Thanks, Joshua. How are you guys?
Okay.
We've been kind of all over the map, and then Kayla just brought in child pornography and AI, and I sort of, that's where I checked out, Kayla. I'm sorry. That's where I'm sitting here with my daughter like, that's why I don't post her pictures on Facebook. Everyone's like,
good for you. Yes.
I do not put her pictures on the Facebook, but I do send them through Messenger to friends, and I know that that is not safe, which sucks. But at least I figure with the algorithm, if there's 3 of her and 1,000 of another kid, hopefully the AI or whatever the other kid. But it's a horrible, horrible thing to think about, you know, what's going on in that realm of, I mean, just the last 15 years of social media, of how it's changed children's development from age 5 to 15. That's something that really we need to stop and really help these kids.
Oh, yeah.
I feel for them. Yeah.
Oh, hey, I'm going to be in a bunch of videos on Child Mind Institute talking about technology and children. So watch out for that. It's going to come up probably at the end of the year.
Well, do you remember, I don't know, we're the same age, Kayla, when you would wear the wrong jeans to school, like Levi's versus Wranglers, and you get made fun of? Like, imagine that world with social media.
Oh,
like
yeah.
If we had social media when we were little teenagers, like in middle school, that's got to be hard to navigate that world. I just can only feel for those kids. I don't know how they navigate, you know, the one wrong lipstick or one wrong shirt or tank top. Like it's got to be hard for those kids.
That's where you as a parent, they need you. That's where our kids definitely need us as a parent to help them and, you know, be open-minded and have a conversation and, you know, really be connected to the community and have a healthy outlook on your mental health, healthy relationships. That's what I always promote with my kids. We have a rule with stuff like that. If my son's being bullied, which he unfortunately was being bullied often, I check the teachers and the administration very fast. And I continuously check them. And then, you know, we have this rule online. If my son is engaging with a toxic person, I'm like, hey, you're not going to see that person ever again, ever. So you just bounce out, just peace out of the game. Screw them. You could do another game. So, you know, just giving them opportunities. And then for my son, I just give him a wider range of opportunities to connect with other kids that are like him, dance, acting. You know, he isn't just going to be stuck in school. If I can give him these opportunities, I will, so that way he knows how to overcome them, who are going to be his friends, you know, stay consistent. Life's going to be full of ups and downs, but just know that, you know, there are people to support you. That's what I'm going to be talking about with the Child Mind Institute.
Fantastic. I don't know if you can see the screen. Sam's had his hand up for a little while.
Oh, no, I can't. Sorry.
Okay, again, 2 points. I hope I remember the second one again this time, okay? But the first one, which is new, is I don't disclose this often, but again, being an alien, I guess, outside this country, joining this country around age 5, joining the educational system, the public education system, I got my share of some of that behavior. So if any of that experience can help with Maxwell, I'd be happy to talk to Maxwell. That's point number 1. Point number 2, on a slightly more macabre or maybe lighter note, I recently read this week that the Musk versus Zuck cage match is back on. Anybody know any more about this? Because I thought it was off for a while.
This is for real, not just publicity.
Oh, yeah. I think they've reconfirmed each of them that it's back on. So I'm just curious why this is happening and, you know, what people make of it. And it's the two people just trying to, you know, show whose piece is bigger or whatever it is. What's really going on here? Or is it all around Twitter?
So what's it going to be? Verbal abuse at 30 megabits?
No. They're actually going to physically, in theory, this is what they both confirmed via texts. They've both confirmed they're going to appear in some octagon or some kind of a cage somewhere. And actually you have a UFC MMA style fight.
Fisticuffs.
With legs and feet and elbows and fists and hands and heads and that sort of thing. Musk was the one that first issued the challenge. And then Zuck said, tell me where. And then this went on for weeks and then it kind of died down. But this week, you know, one of them actually said, yeah, this is going to happen.
I guess it'll be the Trump trial that's going to be verbal abuse at 30 megabits.
Well, he's going to incite more violence. He's the one that's going to incite more violence.
Probably.
He's already threatened that new set of witnesses / judge, right? Got admonished again by the new judge. So I'm just waiting for him to just get locked up. I mean, he's done way more to get locked up than 90% of the people that are currently locked up.
Send him to Elba. Well, Heiner got the reference. Send him off to Elba. You know,
it's a nice island. I recommend.
Actually, pretty nice.
Get him there immediately.
Almost nobody younger than Heiner and me know what I'm talking about.
Maybe you can enlighten them.
Well, if they ask, I tell them. As if you can't put Elba into a Google search and find out.
Yeah, I don't want to know. Thank you, though.
Josh, but maybe you should, because the comparison between Napoleon and Trump is quite tricky.
You know what? I've checked out ever since right before he became president, when he was grabbing the coochie or whatever you want to call it, all the controversy, the year and a half that led up to him becoming the president. To me, it was so simple. If you just stop talking about the guy, he goes away. So that's why I don't want to look into this, because I'm not going to even discuss him because he's not part of my life anymore. And that same thing with the Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. It's just a great publicity stunt.
It's who revere him. That's going to be in your life forever.
Like,
well,
I want to.
Going to go away.
The one thing I've been wanting to talk about, and I know it's the end of the conversation, but I want to talk about communication between whales, orcas, belugas. I want to talk about dolphins. I want to talk about the communication of mycelium. I want to talk about things that are communicating that actually affect our lives. And there's so many more interesting things than humans that are communicating on this planet. I'd like to give that lip service, not Donald Trump.
Josh, I'm fully with you. All you want to talk about, I also want to talk about. I just could not resist laughing, because what you do with such a Hitler, Napoleon, Trump, whatever big potato, which was ruining lives and civilizations and cultures, and the history of Napoleon, how he fared, and to compare it to what Barry mentioned, it just made me laugh, because this is very close to our European history on what to do with such a Hitler, with such a greatest impossible personality. And so keep on trucking and talking to dolphins and mycelia.
And I'm looking up Alba right now. ELBA, and is the island in Italy? Is that correct?
Somewhere in the Mediterranean. I think it's in the Mediterranean.
Elba, the island Elba.
ELBA, yeah.
Elba.
I think it's in the Mediterranean. It should be probably close to Italy.
A place of exiles in 1814 to 1815. Northern town of Portoferraio displays the National Museum of Napoleonic residence trace the French emperor's time on the island. That's the one?
Yep.
Got it.
He was exiled. He actually resigned the monarchy, or whatever the emperorship was called. And in return for resigning, they sent him to this summer camp in Elba. It's like sending somebody to Costa Rica.
I got it. Now I understand the reference. It's like Pablo Neruda was exiled to Sicily.
Yeah, send him off to Costa Rica so he can.
Right. How about we exile him to Florida, to his little home there, which is where he is. So he's good.
Already there.
Yep. In other words, he's already exiled to his own little world. Let's not invite him into our national stage again. That's what I'm saying.
Bedminster, New Jersey.
Yep. Dig VJ, what's going on with you, buddy?
Well, I just got settled at my home. I just got my Wi-Fi running and started studying again. And trying to work on a few of the concepts on theoretical chemistry.
Fantastic. Congratulations on getting home. Did you start that project?
Yeah, I just started that project.
Okay, cool. I was thinking of you. I was watching some theoretical chemistry stuff this week. Look, I got this
Okay,
little
okay.
kid trying to hack a computer. Look at this. I turned it off. She's got bit blocker. What are you doing, kid? What are you doing? I don't know. I got my hands full over here. Well, good to see you on the call. I think we're ending it. I think it's 11.
I'd come over and fix his Wi-Fi for him. He can't get on the internet today, so I told him I'd be by when this is over.
All right. Well, good luck with that. I'll be around if you want to catch up anytime later on today. Or what time is it your time, Biggie? Maybe tomorrow when you wake up?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 10:42 right now. If you want to say, you can say I'm up.
Yeah, I can try. I just got this little kid. I haven't been able to be on this call because my daughter is just going nutty this morning. But I wanted to say, Barry, thank you for debunking the UFOs with me a couple weeks ago. And I did watch Neil deGrasse Tyson saying the same thing and debunking the whole UFO thing.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, thank you for that.
All righty then. Anybody else want to put in a few last words?
Closings?
Well, so Barry, are we going to have a meeting tomorrow? Because I joined in pretty late today.
Yeah, so all things being equal, it'll be again 11 a.m. Eastern time, 2 hours early from right now.
Okay.
And that on this same Zoom channel ID.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the Sunday Collaborology, it's called. Whatever that means. It's a made-up word.
Yeah.
Could be Collaborology. I don't know. All right. So Joshua hung up and Heiner walked away and Sam turned off his camera. So,
okay,
yeah.
I'm back. I can shut the system down, shut the session down if you guys are done.
Yeah, I think we're done. We'll be
Okay.
back.
Yep. Thanks.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Till next time.
See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Sam.
Bye. Bye for
Bye-bye.
now.
Take care.